All right, folks, let's continue where we left off yesterday. I'm sure you're all eager to, those of you who are following my solar eclipse video. So, of course, I was about to end at a perfectly nice place, but I couldn't help it when the flow was on. I kept going, and where I ended on was just to be aware that the May 15th eclipse is a little bit gnarly. Okay, I know for anyone watching this right out, you're like, what am I watching? What is he talking about? I did a first part of a video on the solar eclipse in Taurus on April the 30th. Yesterday, this is the second part of it, and I was just finishing off the sentence where I left everyone hanging. To summarize, here's where we left things from a narrative perspective as far as the solar eclipse is concerned. The Taurus solar eclipse energies made their presence felt with a new set of energies coming into play between September 19th and November 19th, 2021. And you may have felt that somewhere communications connected to these energies, it could be the same event, it could be thematically related, began around April the 11th to April the 29th. Communication aspect, Mercury came into Taurus at that time. The Sun came into Taurus on the 22nd of April, so this particular house is now lit up, and it is time for inner evaluation with regard to where you would like things related to this house to be, with regard as opposed to where things are, seeing where that gap is and see what you would like to do to make certain changes. With the Sun, I find that the energies are utterly authentic and truthful if you allow them to kind of have their way with you, but they're also internal. They're at a soul level. They're at a subconscious level. I don't like that word. They're at a soul level. You're not gonna, in an ideal world, you're not gonna make changes or take actions without a sense of inner alignment. And it is that solar power that gives you that sense of inner alignment. Where am I at? How are things going? Where are we headed? As it always happens when we talk about the Sun's entry into a part of a chart and the personal planets, Mercury and Venus, hovering around the Sun, at least from the way we perceive it, the galvanizing force is the new moon, which occurs at 1:29 p.m. today. I'm doing this video on April the 30th around 10:21 a.m. So the new moon solar eclipse is the match being lit, and for the next, and if it was a new moon, I would say next 4 weeks, but it is a new moon, it's also a solar eclipse, I would say for the next 6 months, this part of the chart gets special focus, and there's a need to lean into tasks and activities and challenges in this part of the chart because they're necessary for your development, your journey here. With the North Node and the South Node, with the nodes, but particularly the North Node, remember to take action in a grounded manner unless you really want to throw caution to the wind and deal with the consequences of that, which could mean, it could certainly, from a conventional material sense, mean a lack of security, and finances are the biggest part of that, because that's what provides, in the way that we have set up our world, our sense of security, for better or for worse. So that is roughly where we left things. We also stated, however, that even though the new moon solar eclipse occurs, and even though it will bring things in the kind of normal new moon way of within 24 to 48 hours, there will be developments. Over the next week, there'll be developments. 2 weeks headed to the Scorpio full moon, and over the next 4 weeks as part of a new moon, it does help to have a 6-month view of this, with the solar eclipse happening on April the 30th, the lunar eclipse in Taurus happening on November the 8th, and the dates of April 30th, June 30th, September 8th, November 8th as important milestones in the 6-month arc. We do get Taurus eclipses next year, but next year, 2023, the eclipses start to change signs from Taurus and Scorpio to Aries and Libra. The eclipses move backwards. So, as far as the signs are concerned, in the way that we think of the progression of the signs. Okay. Now, the other thing I mentioned was that even though the new moon solar eclipse occurs and you would expect things to be all systems go, this idea of all systems go is a little bit different because within 10 days of the new moon, we hit Mercury going retrograde. And Mercury goes retrograde in Gemini, but a significant part of that retrograde is spent in the sign of Taurus. So whatever communications were happening in April, the new moon is revving up left for us to go. Somewhere in the Gemini part of the chart and the Taurus part of the chart, there is a need to reconsider and rethink and take into account certain things that have been glossed over. Now, yes, they could be glossed over because we're moving too fast, but typically they're glossed over because the details are, we're just not present to them. And the universe goes, you know what? If you don't factor this into the equation, if you don't take this into account, this is not going to succeed. You will run into problems. So unfortunately, Mercury retrograde does not have a tendency to bring these things in a very nice manner. It's typically a roadblock. It's typically inconvenience. It's typically communication-related challenges, miscommunications, poor communication, people just seeming like they're out of it, details getting skipped, someone asking for this paper but asking for it 3 times, someone asking for this schedule but calling it schedule 91 when they meant 93, and someone's looking for 91 for 4 hours and then all of a sudden 90, that kind of madness. But through that process, details are uncovered that need to be accommodated in order for something to move forward smoothly. Now, Mercury is retrograde from May the 10th to June the 2nd, and June the 3rd. And interestingly, during that time, and importantly, Venus, the ruler of Taurus, and the bringer of luck, day-to-day luck, opportunities, relationships, not necessarily in a huge, it will be really helpful to have Venus in Taurus during that time. And Venus is going to be in Taurus from May the 28th to June the 23rd. Now, you know, you're looking at this Taurus new moon eclipse wondering why I'm already in May. I told you, new moon solar eclipse today, we're going to be looking to June the 30th to really get some clarity as to how things are shaping up in the 6-month arc between today's, the April 30th new moon solar eclipse, and the corresponding lunar eclipse on November the 8th. So, April the 30th, new moon solar eclipse. May the 10th, Mercury goes retrograde, even though it's in Gemini. May the 23rd, Mercury comes back into Taurus. May the 28th, Venus comes into Taurus. June the 3rd, Mercury goes direct. After June the 3rd, as we head, I would say, towards June the 5th, 6th, 7th, things become clearer and there's a greater chance. I would certainly be very careful of signing things and agreeing to things between May the 10th and June the 2nd. I would be very careful if you absolutely have to look at the details. And if you do, just know that things may change, may evolve, and there could be mistakes, there could be things that ultimately have to be corrected. So if you are not sure that you're dealing with someone who is of the type who will correct something that should be corrected, make sure you look at the details or try and postpone signing things to, I would say, something like June the 7th onwards. Mercury goes direct on June the 3rd, but give it a little time to gather some momentum. So June the 5th, June the 6th, June the 7th onwards. And that time period is going to be so much nicer because in Taurus you've got Mercury direct and Venus direct, so there can really be a sense of here is a culmination that is building. Now, Mercury leaves Taurus on June the 13th, Venus leaves Taurus on June the 23rd, which puts us to that week before June the 30th, week after. So as I said, it's not an eclipse where it's just like, all right, the eclipse has happened and we're going to gallop forward. You are going to gallop forward, but the horse is going to run into certain obstacles where it's going to rear up and other people are going to argue and there's going to be discussion. There's going to be, what are we doing? Or there's going to be, we thought it was this, but it's this, and should it be this? And I don't understand what's going on, and why is this such a problem? And what the, blah, 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 only to come out of it by, I would say, early to mid-June, and certainly by the end of June, to say, all right, now really it is all systems go, okay? Now, what is interesting is that Mars then enters Taurus between July the 5th and August the 20th. So there will be, wherever Mars goes is where the bulk of our energy goes. So actions, goals, pursuit of goals, and also defending boundaries and conflict. Because in the pursuit of goals, it's likely that you're going to run into perhaps a sense of competition, or perhaps other people who don't quite have the same ideas that you might have, or assumptions. And so, or other people, quite frankly, just challenging you or not really happy about where it is that things need to go. So that is, it's a dynamic period. And then, that's August the 20th. I can't make this timing up. I just can't. August the 20th, Mars leaves. And by September the 1st, we're 1 month before the September 8th date of 2 months before the lunar eclipse. And November the 8th, we have the full moon lunar eclipse. I don't know. As I said, certain parts of the chart are more yang, certain parts are more yin. I would certainly be careful of sort of hyper fantasy thinking like the sky will open and all of a sudden you will become a millionaire or millionairess or billionaire, billionairess. At the same time, be open to receive whatever it is that is playing out in front of you. But it's certainly a new set of energies in the Taurus part of your chart. And depending on what the layout of your chart is, for every person there's a season, for everything there's a season. If the Taurus eclipses are happening in a more yin part of the chart, and I've been talking about the Gemini rising, not Sun in Gemini, Gemini rising charts, because the eclipses are happening in Taurus, where even though the eclipse is conjunct Uranus, it's still a kind of a flat, a confining set of eclipses. There could be hospitalizations, there could be caretaking of an older family member, or caretaking of, there could be something that confines you. The energy is still kind of flat. It could be spiritual. I don't want to give the Gemini ascendants a reading right now, but the bottom line is, a lot of whatever's going on with the eclipse is dependent on where the eclipse is happening in your chart. Okay, so we've covered the timeline, I think. Energies, September to November 2021, Mercury coming into Taurus for much of April, and so communication starting up around it, communication-related activity starting around it, the Sun coming in here, making you reflect on what you want and what you don't want in this part of your chart, till about, when the Sun enters Gemini around the 20th of May, 21st, 22nd of May. And then the eclipse bringing opportunities, starting action, both on a 4-week timeline and a 6-month timeline, roughly, but then running into the Mercury retrograde, which means that whatever has been up for discussion in April needs to be revisited or rethought, or certain aspects of it, especially as you head towards, it may come up around May the 10th, but certainly between May the 23rd to June the 13th, with Mercury going direct on June the 3rd. That is going to be up for, whatever was up for discussion in April is going to come back up again, for discussion and revision. And with Venus and Taurus, there's a certain assistance there that's going to smooth that process over, hopefully. It should, astrologically. And then by the time Mercury and Venus clear this energy, we get to June the 30th, which is the 2-month marker of the solar eclipse. And then Mars comes in July and August, and by the time Mars is done leaving and we're taking action in this part of the chart and figuring out what we're going to do and dealing with pursuing our goals and implementing the project plan that, we finally had in place by June the 30th, we might be actually then, for some reason, September the 8th, the week before, about a week after Mars leaves Taurus, becomes relevant again and important again, and from there things gather momentum towards the November the 8th date. Now, this eclipse, new moon, is conjunct Uranus. Uranus is a planet that is known for, people talk about lightning striking and quantum leaps and epiphanies. I am much more on the epiphany side. It's a mental, but it's a very, as I've said before, I think for me Uranus is very much the planet of authenticity and what is right, and liberation in the part of the chart that it is transiting. You becoming more you. And that is going to affect people in different ways. I do associate change with Uranus, but not in the way a lot of other astrologers do sometimes, which is that, oh my God, it's going to be a sudden dramatic, it could be, and be open to, as I said, be open to receiving things and receiving opportunities by all means, and being open to the fact that it might indeed be a quantum leap, And quantum leaps are relative, you know, based on where you're at in and what's going on in that part of the chart for you, right? So irrespective, this is the one aspect of this chart that I think is the most celebrated right now. The fact that it is conjunct Uranus. And for me, I would just say there could be a sense of shackles breaking or greater authenticity or opportunities that lead you in a direction that makes this part of the chart more you or more true to you. So I would certainly be open to that and see exactly how that develops. The only thing I will say as far as considering the suddenness of something is just to say that, what on earth just happened to my laptop? Sorry. Is that I would just say that just be present to the fact that Uranus transits a certain part of the chart over a period of years, you know, so it's not a 1-year transit or a 2-year transit. We're talking, you know, if the changes are occurring, we're talking them occurring over 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're reading things that are giving you the impression that, you know, the universe is going to come and smack you on the face and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So irrespective, it is conjunct Uranus. And then the other transit that is happening really does need to be considered. I'm looking at my laptop. I'm just going to say, here it is. It's back on. It seems to have just kind of gone to snooze. I need to look at the snooze functionality on my laptop. For me, this is a reminder. Back up your technology now, in the next 3, 4, 5 days. Make it a priority to figure out what you need to do to back up your technology. Do it now before Mercury goes retrograde. I'm just going to assume that whatever it is, here it is, it's back up and it's fine. But irrespective, I'm just going to, you know, when you do the kind of work I do, you start to see everything as a sign and everything is not, but you kind of enjoy that process. And I've certainly had those experiences where someone will say, I saw an orb or whatever, and I remember that moment and what it felt like to deliver a message to you. I don't know what's real and what's not real, folks, but welcome to the club. That's just part of the human experience. So, all that said, the other aspect that we cannot ignore is Venus conjuncting Jupiter. Now, this is another one of those instances where everyone's like, Venus is conjuncting Jupiter, the best aspect ever. Venus conjuncts Jupiter every year. And it does not change your life every year. In fact, I don't necessarily know. You know, it's a pretty quick transit. Unless Venus is really going over Jupiter and retrograding and going forward, which we haven't had, which is not the case this year. So, or next year, I think. So irrespective, the important thing to consider here is that Venus in conjunct Jupiter in Pisces. And this is where I know people are going to be like, why are you talking about this? But I'm talking about this for 2 reasons, one of which I outlined yesterday. Venus is the ruler of Taurus. Venus is in Pisces. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, both of whom are in Pisces. So this is a Pisces disposited, Pisces ruled chart for this new moon solar eclipse. The other thing I want to point out is that Pisces is the sign and the part of the chart where there has been activity brewing since 2014, 15, 16, maybe a certain amount of nebulousness, maybe a certain amount of loss, maybe a sense of gaslighting, maybe a sense of thievery, maybe also a sense of exaltation or exalted romantic feelings, spirituality, limerence, a connection with the numinous, the kind of, you know, bliss-like, trance-like states of what some people might call delusional thinking, what other people might call it feels really right. But it's not material. It's sort of anti-material with Neptune's presence there. Neptune is the one constant presence through all these transits, and it is in Pisces. And Neptune, being this kind of foggy, hazy planet, on the positive side can connect you to the arts, connect you to inspiration. And with Venus conjuncting Jupiter, Venus being the other planet of the arts, one thing to keep in mind, because the Venus-Jupiter conjunction is going to be encoded into this new moon solar eclipse for the next 6 months, which is why so many people are so happy about the aspects surrounding this eclipse. There could be, no question, a burgeoning artistic, creative growth. It could be, with Venus, it could be relationships, marriage, contracts. It's not the male aspect of relationships. So it's not desire and sexuality necessarily, but it's not Mars. It's Venus. It's the let's form a community, a bond, let there be flow. It's the feminine aspect of relationships. It's the commitment aspect of relationships. But Venus has a gentleness to her, and no matter how well or poorly she might be placed in someone's chart, I always find that Venus's transits still bring a certain lightness to that part of the chart. Now, a lot depends. If Venus is transiting your 12th house and Pisces is in your 12th house and you have an Aries transit, then it's going to feel a little bit like Venus-related things are on vacation or on hiatus or not readily available to you. So this is a general reading, is a long-winded way of putting it. With the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, for me, what is important to note is that on the 26th, 4 days ago, Venus conjuncted Neptune, then Jupiter. So it's possible that if there's some bounty or gain associated with the Pisces part of the chart, someone had an eye towards taking it, stealing it, taking advantage of it a few days ago. So as you headed towards the 26th, Venus was in this Neptunian phase of loss, gaslighting, artistic, creative expansion, the inspiration, spiritual inspiration, potentially loss and deception. And as we head to Venus conjunct Jupiter today, it might be that there's whatever this gift is that someone else may have an eye on is coming true today, but someone may have an eye on it. Just be aware that Mars is going to conjunct Neptune on May the 18th and Jupiter on May the 29th. And there's something about the lunar eclipse on May the 15th, while Mercury is just freshly retrograde, and where things have been building since March the 15th, where this Pisces part of the chart becomes active again, because that eclipse trines Mars conjuncting Neptune. So we're in the middle of two whirlpools, or two tornadoes. One is about this new moon solar eclipse gathering momentum and taking us to November. The other is about something gathering momentum since the middle of March that is going to come to some sort of uncomfortable but necessary release in the middle of May. And part of what makes this solar eclipse being given some sort of a postponement till June the 30th is the fact that you're going to have to contend with this lunar eclipse coming up in 2 weeks' time. Okay, so it's lovely to have Venus conjunct Jupiter, but keep an eye on that Pisces part of the chart, and just keep an eye on what's going on. If somebody else has an eye on whatever it is, it's a fishy renewal, is the way I would put it. It's a fishy renewal. But it's a renewal all the same. It's a reset of your approach to the Pisces part of the chart and whatever's been going on here. It could be a creative renewal. Do not underestimate the arts, inspiration, and if you are in that space, sort of spirituality with these kind of Piscean transits. But at the same time, for other people, if there's been fishiness or deceptiveness, you are, with these transits that are happening right now in Pisces, finding your renewal again. But April 26th, someone may have tried to do something or get away with something again, and they have an eye to what is coming to fruition on April the 30th. And you have May, where you are going to have to put on your armor and figure out what your relationship to all this is to kind of solidify that renewal and support what is trying to be released in the Taurus part of in the Scorpio part of your chart with this eclipse in 2 weeks' time. Okay? That's all I really want to say. I did it in 2 videos. Feel free to like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button to be notified when I do new videos. Feel free to comment if all that kind of stuff gives the video more circulation on YouTube. And we will take it from there. I hope you found this useful. Fasten your seatbelts. Eclipse time, and let's see where we end up by the time we are heading towards the end of May, and we are done with the May lunar eclipse as well. But a lot of this video and last video is about today's eclipse, so keep an eye towards that timeline and think about what thematically has been in communication in April that goes back to September to November 2021, and keep in mind what's going to happen to all of that as we proceed towards November the 8th. And with Venus conjunct Jupiter, there's absolutely reason to believe, depending on where this eclipse is happening, that something is opening up. And it is an eye towards what is authentic and true and empowering to you. Okay? Leave it at that. between now and the next 2 weeks, you know, we're all going to need all the help we can get. Okay, take care.